Pat Stewart's life was transformed as a mother raising her children in the 60s and 70s in the Deep South. She found herself transformed when her pastor spoke out against President Kennedy and saw signs of racial division in her hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. Come along with me as we hear, "Once I was, now I am." Part 3, Evolving. Once I was, now I am. Once I was a naive young mother of 6, living the average life of a wife and stay-at-home mom. This hometown was in the Midwestern town of Omaha, Nebraska. We had moved to Omaha from Missouri. Our family then moved to Memphis, Tennessee in 1963, a year of upheaval and change, and the death of President John F. Kennedy. It was also the death of that naive young lady. Living 4 years in Memphis, in the midst of riots, killings in Birmingham, and the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, I was transformed. As I think back, it was Alabama Governor George Wallace who did the most to mold my resistance to that type of mentality. No, I did not march to Mississippi on civil rights marches, but I could not overlook the sign I saw in a laundromat: whites only, or maids in uniform. I had no maid as my neighbors did. The pastor of my Catholic church spoke out against President Kennedy and his civil rights stand. I once was an uncommitted observer of events. After all, I had 6 children under the age of 8, so what could I do? I began my research by reading all I could find and joining a couples group led by a young radical priest who helped me understand why life was so different from what I knew as a child. My life in Missouri was one of isolation, 12 years of Catholic education. I was truly sheltered from the other world. My world had no racial discrimination. No blacks were in my world. They lived and went to school in total obscurity. George Wallace and Memphis transformed my thinking like the song Amazing Grace says, "I once was lost, and now I'm found." In fact, the writer of that song was a slave trader, and once he was found, he wrote the song and changed his ways. I read a very disturbing book, Without Sanctuary, a collection of picture postcards of lynching of African Americans. It is a terrible book with a terrible premise. Not only did fellow citizens torture and hang these blacks, but they also had a photographer on hand to make and sell postcards. I continue to be opposed to the mentality I saw 40 years ago and continue to see and hear today. It is happening in our state legislature as I write. Our elected officials are making a mockery of us in Columbia, South Carolina, by pretending to discuss removing, relocating, and defending the Confederate flag. It is a colossal waste of their time and our tax money. I sincerely believe that if they could do so legally, some of these guys in Columbia would lynch those who oppose them. Once I was a writer of family stories. Now I write to express outrage at what I see our legislators doing. I cannot call them leaders. I cannot and will not follow such thinking. Coming up next week, how many ways can one be rejected? Let's hear Pat's many and diverse rejections in her story, Living with Rejection. See you next week as we continue reading from Pat's 2025 book, Love Stories.